This is part 3 of the book about where the mountains meet the moon. Without further ado, let's start the book. Okay. And at that very moment, the trusted servant came rushing in. "Master," he said, "I made the inquiries you asked for. In a flood many years ago, the grocer's family perished, except for the daughter. The king of the city, the emperor's ninth son, adopted the daughter and raised her as his own, and that daughter is your wife." "So the old man of the moon was right," Minli said. "Of course he was," Ba replied. "The old man of the moon knows everything and can answer any questions you ask. I should ask him how to bring fortune to our house." Minli said, "He would know. I'll ask him. Where do I find him again?" "They say he lives on top of the never-ending mountain," Ba said. "But no one I have ever spoken to knows where it is." "Maybe we can find out," Minli said. "Oh, Minli," Ma said impatiently, "bringing fortune to our house, making fruitless mountain bloom. You're always wishing to do the impossible things. Stop believing stories and stop wasting your time." "Stories are not a waste of time," Ba said. "Stories," Ma said, slapping her hands against the table, making the water in the fish bowl sway as she stood up and left the table. "Or what a wasted money on this goldfish." Minli stared down at her rice of bowl. The few white grains left sat like precious pearls at the bottom of her bowl. Ba patted her arm. "Eat all your rice, daughter," he said, and with his shaking hands he scooped the last of his own rice to feed the fish. Chapter 4. That night Minli could not sleep. Ma's words echoed in her ears, and when she closed her eyes she saw Ba's hand shaking from hard work feeding the goldfish. "Ma is right," Minli thought to herself. "The goldfish is just another mouth to feed. I can't let Ba feed the goldfish. Ma and Ba work so hard for every grain of rice. Ba shouldn't have to feed the goldfish too." Minli slipped quietly out of her bed and crept to the table where the goldfish was. They stared at each other, and Minli knew what she had to do. Quickly slipping her shoes and jacket, she took the goldfish and left the house. It was late. The village was quietly asleep, and the stars above filled the sky like splintered salt on dried seaweed. Minli's footsteps seemed to hush the night as she made her way toward the Jade River. At the edge of the river, Minli looked at her goldfish one last time. The moon shone above, so even in the darkness of the night, the fish seemed to burn a bright orange. Its black eyes sparkled at her. "I'm sorry, I can't keep you," Minli whispered. "I hope you will be all right in the river." And with those words, she emptied the bowl into the water. For a moment, the fish seemed shut and was still, like a flickering flame on a match. Then it wiggled in the water and swam in circles, a joyful fire twirling in the water. Minli watched it and sighed. As the sound faded into the night, Minli realized it was an echo of her mother's impatient, frustrated noise. "Ma will never stop sighing unless our fortune changes." "But how will it ever change?" Minli asked ruefully. "I guess that is just another question for the old man of the moon." Too bad no one knows how to get to the never-ending mountain to ask him anything. The fish stopped swimming and looked up at Minli. I know where it is. The female voice was high and soft like the wind whistling through the reeds of the water. Minli stared. Did you say anything? She asked. Yes, the fish said. I know how you can get to the never-ending mountain and ask the old man of the moon a question. You're a talking fish? Minli asked, her words tumbling into each other's with excitement. How can you talk? Most fish talk, the fish said. If you're willing to listen, one, of course, must want to hear. I do, Minli said. Enchanted and eager, this was just like one of Ba's stories. She bubbled with excitement. This was just, do you know the way to the never-ending mountain? I've swum all the oceans and rivers except for one. Except for one, the fish said, and on my way to the last, the goldfish man caught me. I despaired in his cart, for I have seen and learned much of the world, including the way to the never-ending mountain. Since you have set me free, I will tell you. You've swum all the oceans and rivers? Minli asked. The question spilled like overflowing water. Which river haven't you seen? Why have you traveled so much? Where is the never-ending mountain? When did this river is the one river I have not swum, the fish interrupted, and I have waited a long time to see it. So I would like to start as soon as possible. You can ask the old man of the moon all your other questions. Let me tell you the ways to him so I can be off. Minli nodded and asked no more. She realized she was having a conversation with a goldfish, which was very unusual, so she decided to listen. Chapter 5. The next morning, Minli felt as if her head was spinning with thoughts and plans. She was so busy thinking and plotting that she barely noticed her parents nodding sadly at each other when they saw the empty fishbowl. And in the fields, when Minli worked as if in a daze, her parents said nothing but her slow and messy planting. When the sun began to set and Minli went home to make dinner, she quickly washed her hands and made the rice. Then she set the table for 2 people, sat down and wrote this note. Dear Ma and Ba, I am going to the never-ending mountain to ask the old man of the moon how I can change our fortune. I might not be away for many days, but don't worry, I will be fine. When I come back, we will be able to fill our house with gold and jade. Love, your obedient daughter, Minli. The obedient part isn't completely true. Minli thought to herself, as she knew her parents would not be happy to find her gone. But it's not false either. They didn't say I couldn't go, so I'm not being disobedient. Still, Minli knew that wasn't entirely right either, but she shook away her uneasy feelings and prepared for her journey. On a blanket, she put a needle, a pair of chopsticks, her white rabbit rice bowl, a small piece of dried bamboo, her hollow gourd full of water, a small knife, a fish net, some uncooked rice, a large pot, and the one remaining copper coin. Then she wrapped her blanket into a bag, tied it on her back, and took a last look at the shabby house. Through the windows, Foodless Mountain stood like a shadow, but Minli closed her eyes and imagined the house shimmering with gold and the mountain jade green with trees and smiled. Then she opened her eyes and left. Chapter 6. As Minli left the house, she was afraid some of her neighbors would stop her or ask where she was going. She felt she must look mysterious, with a large bag on her back and full of excitement, but no one noticed her. The neighbors kept sweeping their doorways, hanging their laundry, and preparing dinner. A boy and a girl continued their fight over a pretend feast of mud. When the mother called them for dinner, both refused to move, each clinging to their dishes of wet dirt. Minli had to smile at their foolishness. So Minli walked right out of the village without causing a second glance. At the edge of the village, she turned toward Foodless Mountain. At the bottom of the mountain, she unwrapped her blanket and took out her knife, needle, rice bowl, bamboo piece, and jug of water. Then, trying to remember all the goldfish instructions, she cracked off a small bit of stone and rubbed it up and down the needle 99 times before tossing it back to the ground. Then she filled her rice bowl halfway with water and let the bamboo float in it. After that, she picked up the needle and looked at the white rabbit on her bowl. "Okay," she said to the jumping rabbit, "lead the way." And she placed the needle onto the bamboo. Like magic, the needle spun around. Minli smiled. "Thank you," Minli said again to the painted rabbit. "Now, I'll follow wherever you want me to go." Minli packed up her things and carefully, holding the bowl in her hand, walked in the direction of the needle. Past Foodless Mountain. "Goodbye, Jade Dragon," Minli said as she left. "When I come back, I will know how to make you happy again." Minli walked and walked, and the stony land slowly turned into forest. Even when the moon was high in the sky, she continued, "I want to make sure I walk far enough that if Ma and Ba begin to look for me, they can find me," Minli said to herself. The fallen leaves made a small carpet for her feet, and the night birds flew into the sky as she passed. Only when the sky lightened to gray and the sun began to peek over the horizon did not Minli sit down and rest against a tall tree. She had traveled deep into the forest, far from her village and her home. She was so tired that she quietly fell asleep, and quickly. Chapter 7. The sun had set and the moon was just beginning to rise. In the sky, when Ma and Ba returned home from the fields, even though they could smell the steam from the rice cooking, they noticed the house was strangely dark and quiet. "Why is Minli sitting in the darkness?" Ma wondered as they approached the house. "Perhaps she is sad about giving up her goldfish," Ba said as he shook his head. "Can our fortune be any more poorer?" Ma sighed. "We cannot even feed a goldfish for our daughter." But as Minli's parents entered the house and read her note, Ma made a noise like a shrieking cat. "I spoke too soon," Ma cried. "Our fortune is now the worst, for our only daughter is gone." "Quiet, quiet, wife," Ba hushed her. "If we move quickly, we can find her and bring her back home." Ba hurriedly took out his cloth sack and gathered blankets and filled an empty bottle with water. She had already halfway day traveled ahead, he said. "It might take us some time to find her." Ma watched him and then began to pack the cooked rice into a traveling box, but she continued to weep. "It is all the stories you told her," Ma sobbed. "She believed them and now is looking for all the fairy tales." Her words cut into Ba like slices from a knife, but even though his face was pained, he said nothing and continued to pack. His hands trembled as he tied the bag closed, but they were gentle when he put them on Ma's shoulders. "Let us go," he said. As they left the house, many of the neighbors poked their heads out of the doors. They had heard the mass screams through the thin walls of their closely spaced houses and wanted to know what happened. Page 38, and that is it for today. We're gonna start the next part tomorrow, and I hope you guys like this video. See you guys next time. Bye, guys!